And we are live.
Good afternoon. On behalf of Appropriations Committee Chairwoman Maggie McIntosh, welcome to the House Appropriations Committee virtual bill hearing on Thursday, February 17th, 2022. This afternoon, we have 10 bills which are going to be heard. As a reminder that the bill sponsors have ample amount of time to present their bills, and any supporting witnesses will have 2 minutes to provide testimony. First, we have House Bill 742, Delegate Learman, State Retirement Pension System, COVID-19 related death benefits sunset extension. Delegate Learman, great to see you. Please proceed when you're ready.
Great to see you all. Thanks so much. I'm back with another pension bill. This is a bill that simply extends a legislation that we passed last year by 1 additional year. Last year, this committee and the General Assembly passed legislation creating a system so that the families of state workers who had died because of COVID could access that line of duty death benefits. That has been a process that has worked. The pandemic has gone on for longer than we all anticipated, perhaps. And so this bill simply extends that program 1 additional year. And I ask the committee for a favorable report.
Thank you very much, Delegate Learman, for presenting the bill. This afternoon, we have Mr. Lance Fitzpatrick with the AFSCME Council 3 providing testimony. Mr. Kirkpatrick, please proceed when you're ready. 2 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair, and thank you, members of the Appropriations Committee. For the record, Lance Kilpatrick, Legislative and Political Director for AFSCME Council 3, representing approximately 30,000 state and higher education employees. I really wish I wasn't here advocating for this bill, but here we are a year later, and we need a year-long extension. So because of that, I want to thank Delegate Learman and also Senator Alfreds for their leadership on this. I want to thank SRPS, who have been unfortunately very effective in being able to handle this new benefit going forward. Just in the last couple of weeks, I believe we have 2 members who will likely qualify for this. So, that clearly saddens me to say that, but I am thankful that this legislation is here, this law is in place, and that it'll be extended. So with that, AFSCME asks for a favorable report on this legislation, and thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kilpatrick, for being here. And Delegate Learman, are there any questions from members of the Appropriations Committee for the bill sponsor or the witness? Seeing none, thank you very much, Delegate Learman, for being here. That concludes the bill hearing for House Bill 742. The committee will now move on to House Bill 648, Delegate Washington, Maryland Higher Education Outreach and College Access Program Funding. Delegate Washington, please proceed when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate it. And thank you and good to see everybody. For the record, Delegate Alonzo Washington here to present on House Bill 648. This is a piece of legislation that I brought before you multiple years and that this committee helped fund when we started the program as a pilot program many years ago, and the governor funded it at $250,000 to help low-income students matriculate through high school and into college as first-generation college students. And so there's an appropriation currently permanently of $200,000, of which this committee supported in previous years, and we're really appreciative. We've seen over about 1,000 students just in one of the nonprofits that participated in this program through MHEC. In the last 3 years, 1,000 students, 3 years from one nonprofit under this program. Imagine if we took it from $200,000 to $7 million. That would have a significant increase in the number of students first generation college bound students and low income students that we can get into college. And I hope that this committee would vote favorably on this bill. And thank you all for your continued support in the previous years. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vice Chair Washington, for presenting the bill. This afternoon, we have 7 witnesses who are going to be providing testimony to support the bill. We'll hear from the witnesses, and then we'll take questions from the committee. First, we have Casey Motz from the College Bound Foundation.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Good afternoon to the committee. I'm particularly happy to see my delegate, Tony Bridges, but it's nice to be in front of all of you. You are the Appropriations Committee, and so you have the weighty task of deciding how best to spend the state's money. And I would argue that there's no better way to spend the state's money than on helping low-income, high-achieving students get to college. I am the executive director of the College Bound Foundation in Baltimore City. I'm also the vice chair of the Maryland Alliance for College Affordability and Equity. And as the vice chair said, I am one of the nonprofits I lead one of the nonprofits that has benefited from this program. With money from this competitive state program, we in Baltimore City were able to seed a program that led to, now has 250 Pell Grant eligible students from all graduates of Baltimore City Public Schools in college and succeeding. The first class of students graduated from college at an 80% rate from four-year college, which is astonishingly high compared to the national average and even compared to the 54% state average of Pell Grant eligible students who go to college. One thing I would say is that the state aid for low-income students is generous, but could be more generous. This is a relatively inexpensive way providing outreach to students and to support them at high school and college to leverage the state aid that students are already receiving. Our program is funded, we can fund $1,400 per student per year to support students in this program. And the state aid is in the order of magnitude of $19,000 per year per student who get the guaranteed access grant. So if you get to college and we are able to work with you, we can help you cross the line to college graduation. I would just say in summary that I know my time is short, that there's a lack of statewide infrastructure for supporting students during college. And organizations like ours, through this competitive state grant, can help students stay in college and graduate. And I would encourage you to up the appropriation for this bill. So thank you very
much, Ms. Motz. Very much appreciate your testimony. Next, we have Keithia Kalaki from the First Generation College Bound.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kethia, and I'm in the program with Mr. Fisher, First Generation College Bound. And I just want to say that every day, I'm very thankful and grateful that I ever found this program that's helped me be a freshman in college, full-time student living on campus. I don't know where I would be without First Generation College Bound. I mean, my situation was very difficult. I was having trouble with my financial aid situation. If it wasn't for First Generation College Bound, I would not be where I am today. I found out about them through a family friend who put me in contact with Mr. Fisher, and Mr. Fisher, along with his staff, helped me. They supported me along the way. They showed me the right grants and scholarships I could apply to. They showed me how to apply, how to reach my delegates, my senator, and through them, I was able to find and apply to all the scholarships I needed. So I'm forever grateful because I would not be going to college. I had the potential. I got accepted to 10 out of the 13 schools I applied to, but I had no money to go. And if it weren't for them, I would probably be staying home, just not being as productive as I've been. So I'm very grateful. And I hope that other students like me are able to find, help through other programs or FGCB so they can get the help they need to go to college, because it's very hard. I'm just glad they pointed me towards the right direction. They just helped me. Like, I would not be able to get this help from my family, being that I'm first generation. My parents are immigrants, so they don't really know how the education system goes in the US, so they were not able to help me at all. But I had all the support I needed from First Generation College Bound, and for that, I'm forever grateful. Thank you so much.
That's wonderful. Thank you very much, Ms. Kalaki, for your testimony, and great to hear that you're doing well in your academics. Next, we'll hear from Amma Felix with the Collegiate Direction, Inc.
Good afternoon, committee. My name is Amma Felix. I'm the president and CEO of Collegiate Directions, Inc. Thank you for the opportunity to speak in favor of this bill. Collegiate Directions was one of the organizations that was supported during the pilot program. We also had similar, very successful results that I had previously shared with this body in the past. But I wanted to speak today about the significance of why funding is needed, and to say that working with nonprofits that are already established in this field to help support them, to provide the one-on-one support that students and families need in order to apply for financial aid and admissions is essential. Here are some background facts. In 2021, Maryland had $58.3 million in unclaimed free FAFSA funds. Also in 2021, undergraduate enrollment at the state's public institutions decreased in all segments by 5.8%, which is above the national rate at 3.1%. And we know that low-income families were disproportionately affected by this. So the point of sharing these two pieces of data are to say that with the right supports, I think accessing these public resources, we could really raise the level of engagement and enrollment in undergraduate studies, and also ensure that there's greater accessibility to public resources and supports. And in order to do that, you need talented staff that have the skill and expertise to help with both admissions and application of financial aid. And this bill really can help support that. As Cassie mentioned, there's not the infrastructure currently to support that. And there's many, many students in need. And this bill will provide the resources to be able to help us meet that need. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Felix, for your testimony. Next, we have Christian Black with First Generation College Bound. Christian Black with First Generation College Bound. How about Daisy Velasco with First Generation College Bound?
Yes,
Hi,
hello. Yes.
How you doing, ma'am?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for your time. I'm here supporting First Generation College Bound. Just as my previous fellow companion over there kind of mentioned, First Generation is such a blessing. It's honestly, just like her, I'm grateful every day for First Generation. I graduated from University of Maryland College Park in 2019, and currently I'm at the University of Baltimore School of Law. But I know it wouldn't be possible without First Generation College Bound. When I was back in middle school, they started the program, and along the way, I kind of got lost through the system, but they came back and they found me in high school, and they really did help me navigate through the college application process, financial aid application process. I always say it doesn't really matter what your GPA is, how smart you may be, how much knowledge you think you have. If you don't have that help or support or guidance in the college application process, it's very difficult to get the financial aid you need. And I know that if it hadn't been for First Generation College Bound, I wouldn't have been able to afford the University of Maryland, or I wouldn't be where I am today. But thanks to them, I was able to get the Guaranteed Access Grant, and I graduated college with no debt. And even though there isn't much help right now in law school, they do help me find the little resources that do exist. So I'm thankful to them every day. And apart from me, they've further extended, and now I have a younger brother who's also received help from First Generation, and he's now a junior at the University of Maryland as well. So First Generation has been such a help to me, and I know that with more funding, they'll be able to reach more students, and there'll be more stories of success just like my own. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Velasco, for sharing your successful story. It's great to hear that you're doing well at UB Law. We wish your brother the best at College Park. Next, we'll hear testimony from Jaleel Niles from the First Generation College Bound. Jaleel Niles?
Yes. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jaleel Niles. I'm currently a freshman at the University of Maryland, Baltimore County. The First Generation College Bound program has helped me a lot with navigating the college admission process and receiving the GA grant and preparing to attend college. I joined the program in 9th grade at Duval High School, and throughout my 4 years at Duval, First Generation College Bound has provided me with numerous resources, such as the Transition to College Workshop, in which we met 3 First Generation students, college students, who provided us with tips on how they overcame challenges, choosing their major, balanced their classes and life schedule. Before joining First Generation College Bound, I never heard of the GA grant. After receiving the GA grant for the 2021-2022 school year, I feel as though many others should be able to receive the full benefits, or at least some of the benefits, if their income qualifies them to do so. Without this grant, I would have had to take out student loans cover what my scholarships and other awards did not cover. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Niles, for being here. Next, we'll hear from Joseph Fisher from First Generation College Bound.
Hi, hello, my name is Joe Fisher. I'm the CEO and founder of First Generation College Bound, and proud to be here as one of my own that we started with in 8th grade as a state delegate, and that's Alonzo Washington. I'm also pleased and I'm glad to see Ben Barnes, who's been supportive of this initiative since we have started, as well as Delegate Jared Solomon, because we work in Prince George's County as well. We might be in your county. For any of you out there, you may not know it, but we have that kind of a reach. You need to know that. And I also want to say hello to Delegate Susie Proctor, in which we will be piloting a program at school in her district, which she has asked us to do. And again, that's another reason why we need these funds, as we're going to pilot in her district. First Generation College Bound, I want you to know, we have been a partner with the Maryland Higher Education Commission since 1990, providing outreach. And this was due to leadership, Maryland Higher Education leadership, recognizing that they were marketing and making students aware of Maryland state financial aid, but they needed help in terms of students applying for the GA grant and the EA. Students were making them aware of it, but they were not applying for it. So they needed that outreach, especially students from low-income families, to complete the process. I want to tell you all, there are people coming in and making students aware of what to do, and they say, here it is, go do it. It doesn't work that way. We have to be there with them to provide that support, not just to the students, but the parents as well. The need for the outreach is needed not just for the Maryland Higher Education Commission. I'm going to tell you right now, it's also needed in the college admissions process, as I just said, which is why we are partnered with the University System of Maryland. Oh, we leverage their resources as well. They come in, they talk to the kids, but guess what? We're in the background because our kids want to go to these Maryland State colleges and universities, and we want them to complete the on-time process to be admitted and also get the financial aid required. The outreach, FGCB and other members of the Maryland Alliance, which we have put together to advocate for these students, I'm going to tell you, it's so important because it's impacting our students attending Maryland State colleges and universities. I also sent with my written testimony a data that shows that over the years that I've been doing this work, building this thing out, guess what? We got all these alumni, and most of them are in the top 10 Maryland State schools. Why? Because they get the money to afford to attend and graduate with little to no debt. And we're talking about low-income students. We need this funding. The state.
Thank you, Mr. Fisher. Thank you very much for your passion.
From the Maryland State colleges and universities.
Thank you very much.
Maryland Higher Education Commission. I'm sorry. Thank you.
You got it. You got it. No, thanks for your leadership and thanks for your collaborative spirit with all the who's on the Appropriations Committee. So it's good to see that that's going
Sorry about that.
That's all right. That's all good. Okay. One last time, Christian Black with the First Generation College Bound. Okay. Are there any questions from members of the Appropriations Committee for Vice Chair Washington or the panel or witnesses here? Seeing none, we also have written testimony by Rich Cyril.
Mr. Chairman, I
Barnes.
don't have a question, but I just want to say hello to my good friend Joe and thank him for all he's done on this issue over the many years. And it's been unbelievable work changing the lives of students for decades. So thank you. That's all, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for indulging me on that.
You're welcome. You're welcome. You're one of the who's on the committee here. So we gave you a shout out. So good to have you here. And again, we have written testimony by Rich Cirillo with the Parent Advocacy Consortium, and also we have written testimony from Sarah Fiddler with the Maryland Independent Colleges and Universities. That ends the bill hearing for House Bill 648. Next, we'll move on to House Bill 542. Delegate Lewis, a member of the Appropriations Committee, and that's going to be on the State Retirement and Pension Systems Investment Committee, Use of Minority Business Enterprise Diversity Among Asset Managers Act of 2022. Delegate Lewis, please proceed when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. I am here in support of House Bill 542. This bill, as it currently stands, would require the investment committee of the State Retirement Agency to use minority business enterprises to provide at least 20% of the brokerage and investment management services to the Board of Trustees of the State Retirement and Pension System, and to manage at least 20% of the assets of the several systems that we have. as well as requiring the investment committee to assess the use of minority business enterprises beginning this year and every fiscal year afterwards. So why is diversity among asset managers important? This bill allows for businesses run by minorities and women to have equitable opportunities to participate in financial management. Nationally, we have had a reckoning with racial inequality, and as a society, we are reviewing how we can make sure America reaches its promise in our education system, in housing, in healthcare, and yes, in the financial sector. The motivation of this bill is to encourage the SRA to set and meet a realistic goal to expand opportunities to use and leverage minority and women-owned businesses in managing our retirees' money. A wealth of research makes clear that diverse managers perform similarly to or better than their peers. The National Association of Investment Companies, for example, has produced multiple studies showing that diverse managers actually outperform their benchmarks. And a 2020 analysis by Bloomberg revealed that over 3 years, hedge funds run by minority groups or women had returns almost double those of funds run by their white male counterparts. If we are not fully networked within diverse managers and using their talents, we are missing out on needed performance. In order to set an appropriate race-specific goal, we must conduct a disparity study to determine whether and to what degree businesses run by minority groups are disproportionately underutilized compared to non-minority groups. There are 4 primary segments of the asset management industry, from mutual aid, hedge funds, private equity, and real estate. But a report from the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation found that women and minority firms only make up between 3 to 9% of these assets across the board. I know that this bill will require certain amendments, and we have been working with the State Retirement Agency, Department of Legislative Services, and the Attorney General's office to get this done right. But I remain committed to promoting businesses from underrepresented communities to take part in this industry, particularly since Maryland is at current 17% utilization, which is great, but we are the 4th most diverse state in the union, almost 50% of our population, and we can always do just a little bit more. I want to thank the State Retirement Agency for their continued work in addressing this issue and for their efforts so far in promoting diversity. I look forward to working with them on furthering developing diversity in this field and completing the work that remains outstanding. For these reasons, I urge a favorable vote on House Bill 542.
Thank you very much, Delegate Lewis, for presenting Bill House Bill 542. This afternoon, we have joining us from the State Retirement Pension System, Ms. Ann Galthrop, Mr. Marvin Novin, and Mr. Andrew Palmer, who are here for information. Are there any questions from members of the committee for the bill sponsor? Seeing none, that ends the bill hearing for House Bill 542. The committee will now move on to House Bill 763, presented by Delegate Bridges and also Delegate Wells. It is the Correctional Officers Retirement System membership. Delegate Bridges, please proceed when you're ready.
Thank you very much. Members of the Appropriations Committee, thank you for the opportunity to bring you House Bill 763. This bill really is focusing on the Correctional Officers Retirement System membership, and it aims to include additional positions within the Maryland Department of Juvenile Services into that retirement system, particularly the case managers from the Department of Juvenile Services, who are equivalent to parole and probation agents, but aren't included in the Correctional Officers Retirement System. One thing I will mention is that you should have an amendment for this bill in your system, because the original bill listed the wrong position. So my apologies on that. But the amendment states that an individual serving in the Department of Juvenile Services should be an employee in one of the following positions: Case Management Specialist 1, 2, and 3, Case Management Specialist Supervisor, Case Management Specialist Program Supervisor, Group Life Manager 1, and Group Life Manager 2. So these DGS case management specialists and group life managers are essentially the same as parole and probation agents and lieutenants, except they are for the juvenile services clientele. So while serving different populations, DJS case managers' daily activities, required skills, licensing, and training are similar. Parole and probation agents are in the correctional officers retirement system, while DJS case management specialists are not. So what we're trying to do is strengthen the benefits for those individuals and recognize the importance of the work that they do in helping to alleviate some of the difficulties in finding and retaining qualified individuals for parole and for case management specialists. These specialists are responsible for youth on a daily basis and often find themselves working with families as well. They oversee conditions of probation for youth and help reintegrate youth in their family. And there's a pressing need to increase individuals within the agency because of staff turnover that is really persistent among all of our agencies. So House Bill 763 is just a step in the right direction of making sure that we're benefiting all of those that are involved. And it's a tool in the toolbox for us to really help recruit and retain staff for the department. And so for those reasons, I do urge you to support the passage of House Bill 763. I know we also have Mr. Lance Kilpatrick and members from AFSCME Maryland who are here and would like to testify as well, Mr. Chair. And so if you'll indulge them as well, we'd be more than happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Delegate Bridges, for presenting the bill. We have a question from Delegate Rice. Delegate Rice.
Oh, thank you. Sorry, I was making sure I was not on mute here. Were any of these issues ever taken up during a collective bargaining deliberations at all?
We also have.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Delegate Rice, we also have 5 witnesses here from AFSCME. Perhaps we can hear.
Well, we can
their
ask them.
testimony.
Sure,
Okay.
absolutely. They can, or if they want to in their comments, they can answer that question. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Delegate Rice. This afternoon, we have 5 witnesses who are supporting the bill. First is Lance Kilpatrick with AFSCME Council 3. Mr. Kilpatrick, thank you for being here.
Thank you once again, Mr. Vice Chair and members of the committee. For the record, again, my name is Lance Kilpatrick. I'm the Legislative and Political Director for AFSCME Council 3, representing 30,000 state and higher education employees, including Department of Juvenile Services, case management specialists. Briefly, because I want them to tell their story, okay? These are folks that do the job of a parole and probation agent who are in the correctional officers retirement system, yet these folks are not. The only difference between their job and what parole and probation agents do is that they are dealing with juveniles. Otherwise, their jobs are the same. The training is the same. The certification is the same, right? These are tough jobs. And the 20-year retirement system was created specifically for folks who are in jobs that are such high stress that they literally cause a shorter lifespan. So I please urge the committee to vote in favor of this legislation. I thank Delegate Bridges for his leadership on this issue. I would like to turn it over to my members now for them to tell their story.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kilpatrick. Delegate Rice did have a question. Delegate Rice, was your question answered?
Sorry, not yet. No, I guess my question was where it was the issues that this bill's trying to resolve, were any of these issues taken up during any of the collective bargaining and negotiation at all?
Mr. Vice Chair, if I may?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Delegate Grice, great to see you again. Thank you for always engaging with me on these issues. So as a matter of fact, we have brought this up in negotiations in the past, usually in a much larger issue around annual salary reviews and things along those lines. I think that SRPS would agree that something like this is more formally and effectively done through legislation as opposed to collective bargaining in this situation. This is not new legislation. We actually brought this up as far back as when Delegate Jackson was Delegate Jackson as opposed to Senator Jackson. Again, this is an issue that can be resolved legislatively. It's incredibly important for our folks who, frankly, since COVID, have had their stress level in terms of the work that they do increase exponentially, as you can well imagine, given these situations. So that is why we are pursuing it as such.
As a follow-up question, and this is a bill actually I might be on board with, because I know that there's a lot of turnover in corrections actually, and anything that we can do to help retain employees would be awesome. But my follow-up question is this set up, was it designed originally because some, I guess, positions in corrections is more dangerous than others, and you want to do everything you possibly can to incentivize folks and at least protect them, probably more so than you would people in other job classifications? Was that the intent originally with the way I guess the pensions are set up now?
Well, I feel like I would be stepping on SRPS's toes to say what their intent was.
Sure, yeah.
Clearly from our perspective, yes, these are dangerous jobs. I can freely admit that I could not do these jobs.
Right.
I just couldn't. So, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, though. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And I appreciate your anticipated support, Delegate.
Thank you very much, Delegate Grice. Thank you very much, Mr. Kilpatrick. We have joining us today Danielle Dinkins with ASME Maryland. Ms. Dinkins. Thanks for being here. You can unmute yourself and please provide your testimony in 2 minutes.
Hello, Madam Chair and members of this committee. My name is Daniela Dinkins, and I appreciate you taking the time to hear me today. I was previously a Group Life Manager 1, but now I'm a Case Manager Specialist at Cheltenham Youth Detention Center. I'm a longtime member of the ASME Local 3167, and I work for the Department of Juvenile Services for over 12 years. I'm here asking the members of this committee to support the addition of several DJS classifications outlined in the proposed bill before you today. Prior to being a Case Manager Specialist, I was a Group Life Manager, also known as a Shift Commander. This position was not only dangerous, but a position that required me to deal with ensuring the safety of youth as well as the staff on a consistent basis. While this committee may not be fully aware, Group Life Managers 1s and 2s are frontline workers. Group Life Managers respond to all assistance calls and crisis situations within the facility and intervene as needed. This also requires us to be knowledgeable of everyone's position, as though we not only responsible for the youth, but the staff on duty as well. The youth that we deal with on a daily basis suffer from severe trauma and mental health issues that make our job actually extra harder to deal with. In return, this made our daily job very exhausting, and it felt like we can't properly address the needs of the individuals that we signed up for to help rehabilitate. I've committed my life to work with at-risk youth, but in a capacity where I feel like I'm making a difference. This position should be staffed with the most dedicated and knowledgeable individuals to work with Maryland's at-risk youth. Group Life Managers are the nucleus of the facilities for the State of Maryland Department of Juvenile Services. When I was a Group Life Manager 1, I often felt myself having to work with new individuals on a consistent basis because of the lack of retention in this position. Very often that's because we lose hardworking, dedicated individuals to other positions that have the same exact experience but offer 20-year retirement. In closing, I'm asking that this committee support the bill that will allow me and my talented coworkers the opportunity to be a member of the Corps' retirement plan. Thank you for your time and consideration today.
Thank you very much, Ms. Dinkins, for providing your testimony and working with our youth. Next, we'll hear from Thomas Foreman with ASME Maryland.
Good afternoon. My name is Thomas Foreman, and I'm a DGS Community Case Manager Specialist 3. I work in the Frederick office. I've been there for 18 years. I support adding the DGS classification as outlined in the amendment for House Bill 763. DGS Community Case Managers are not paper pushers. We are out in the community visiting clients and families outside of the controlled structured environment of a DJS office. Visits can take place in the client's home, the community location, or at their schools. Some of these environments are dangerous and many are in high crime areas. The clients we work with are delinquent youth who have been charged with some misdemeanor crimes, but also children who have been charged with felony offenses, including but not limited to first-degree assault, robbery, armed robbery, drug distribution, serious sex offenses, and we also can have some responsibilities for children who are charged as adults. We usually meet our clients by ourselves in the community. DGS case managers are often the first call many families, law enforcement, and or school officials make when there's a problem or crisis with the family. We always answer that call. Our department has recognized the dangers of our daily job functions and mandated training on situational awareness that addresses safety when visiting clients in the community, including their home, school, as well as residential facilities. DGS case managers are certified through the Maryland Police and Correctional Training Commission yearly to work with children and families. DGS employees who are providing direct care receive the same certifications as law enforcement, parole and probation, and correctional officers. Lastly, let me offer a few examples of the dangers we face in the community. I've conducted a standard home visit of a client in the past, not knowing hours later that he was charged and arrested as an adult for alleged attempted first-degree murder and first-degree assault. I have stepped in between children and adults in their home to stop physical altercations from from occurring. I've also in the past been fitted for and provided a bulletproof vest to perform some duties in violent neighborhoods. As stated previously, community case managers are not paper pushers, but we're frontline workers dealing with children and
Thank you,
families.
Mr. Foreman. Thank you very much, Mr. Foreman. Thank you for what you
Thank
do.
you.
And thank you specifically for your service over in the Frederick area of our state. Appreciate it. Next, we have Mr. Kurt Taylor with Ask Me Maryland.
Good afternoon. My name is Kurt Taylor. I'm a case management specialist supervisor at Back Bay Mountain Youth Center in Garrett County. I'd like to thank the committee and ask me for giving me the opportunity to speak to you today in regards to House Bill 763. I would like to solicit your support for House Bill 763. This legislation with the amendments would add the positions that we previously discussed to the correctional officer retirement system. In recent years, there have been other job classifications within DJS that were added to the system, but after amendments, the classifications I previously mentioned were left out. Although our job titles would make it seem that we are management positions, our jobs are comparable to classifications in the parole and probation that are already eligible for cores. Speaking specifically for residential case managers as well as group life managers, we are frontline workers. We are identified as direct care essential employees who are required to report to the facility regardless of exigent conditions. In the facility, we work with the highest risk juvenile offenders in the state of Maryland. Our population consists of youth who have exhausted all other community-based options and require further rehabilitation. Our job classifications receive the same entry level and annual refresher training as job classifications within DJS that are already included in cores, in addition to job-specific trainings. The above job classifications are integral in the daily operation of facilities in which we work. These job classifications represent some of the more tenured and experienced staff in the facilities. In an effort to recruit and retain the most experienced staff, these positions, it would be beneficial to be included in the same retirement system as employees we are working beside, supervising, and training on a daily basis. Adding these job classifications to core should aid in keeping the most experienced staff of the department, as well as encourage other qualified employees who are otherwise concerned about extending the length of their career to explore these career options within the department. In addition, to help fix the disparity that was created in 2019 when some job classifications from DJS were added to the pension system and we were not. I would like to thank Delegate Bridges and Wells for sponsoring the bill and ask the committee for a favorable report in regards to House Bill 763.
Thank you very much, Mr. Taylor, for your testimony. Next, we have Ashley Watson with Ask Me Council 3. Ashley Watson.
Hello, Chair and members of this committee. I appreciate you taking the time to hear me out today. My name is Ashley Watson, and I'm a case management specialist for the Department of Juvenile Services. I'm also a proud member of Ask Me Local 3167, and I have worked for the department for over 14 years. Although being a case manager for at-risk youth is a rewarding career, it can be very dangerous. A case manager, we not only have to rehabilitate at-risk youth, but we often rehabilitate the family as a whole. Case management specialists are responsible for these youth on a daily basis in DJS facilities, courthouses, schools, and now more and more in neighborhoods, which have become extremely dangerous. A case management specialist is basically a juvenile probation officer. We oversee the conditions of the probation for the youth, as well as reintegrating families and communities back together. When meeting the needs of our youth, we can encounter serious obstacles. Most of our youth have serious mental health issues stemming from multiple traumas that have occurred in their lives, making it hard to address their needs. This requires that case managers work really diligently with long and endless hours on caseloads to ensure that youth are getting the proper education, therapy, and many other things that are intertwined to ensure their complete rehabilitation. While parole and probation officers and DJS case managers require the same education and training, I believe that a DJS case managers carry greater responsibility for engaging at-risk youth that more than a probation officer would with an adult. When we are often responsible for guiding and advising them on daily life choices, it is more than just explaining them the conditions of probation and sending them back into the community. DJS case managers often have a heavy caseload due to short staffing that is brought on by losing great and dedicated employees to other agencies that have smaller caseloads and less responsibilities. If anyone on this committee knows anything about working with a young population, the first step towards success is to getting them to trust you. While the state is in a staffing crisis, we're losing case managers at a higher rate than before. making it hard for these youth to successfully complete their probation because they have to learn to reentrust their future with different case managers on a consistent basis. While those challenges are still continuing today, COVID-19 has prevented even more challenges, causing a higher turnover rate, as well as giving no to little stability to the youth we serve in Maryland. I ask this committee to support the bill because it will help retain staff. It will also help Maryland's youth get the staff that they deserve to work with most dedicated case management specialists that Maryland has to offer. This bill will be one less obstacle our youth will have to deal with while being rehabilitated in the Maryland juvenile justice system. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Watson, for your testimony. Are there any questions from members of the Appropriations Committee for the bill sponsor or the witnesses that are here today? We also have information that's written by Barbara Wilkins with the Department of Budget and Management. To the bill sponsor, Delegate Bridges, thank you so much for presenting this bill, and thanks for your leadership as chairman of the Public Safety Subcommittee. Really appreciate everything you're doing during your first session as chair of that subcommittee. So thank you. That ends the bill hearing for House Bill 763. The committee will now move on to House Bill 748. Delegate Riley, Law Enforcement Officers Pension System Benefits. Delegate Riley, please proceed when you're ready.
Thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairman McIntosh. I can't see if she's on there or not, but if not, Vice Chair Chang, thank you. And the members of the House Appropriations Committee. For the record, I am Delegate Teresa Riley from the District 35B, here to introduce HB 748, Law Enforcement Officers Pension System Benefits. This pension bill changes the current benefit formula of the Law Enforcement Officers Pension System's LEOPS. It increases the retirement benefit multiplier to 2.5% and raises the cap on retirement benefit payments to 70% of the average final compensation. There have been concerning trends nationwide with officer retention and recruitment for new hires. It is important that all of our state and local law enforcement agencies have the access to the best qualified applicants to serve and to protect our communities. Now is the time to address and enhance and offer competitive retirement compensation to attract the best recruits into the ranks of all of our Maryland law enforcement agencies. HB 748 is cross-filed with Senate Bill 115. You do have a letter, a favorable testimony letter from the Harford County executive, which I believe he funds one of the largest groups or agencies that is in the LEOPS plan. So I wanted you to take notice on that. And I also am aware of a MACO amendment that is on file. And I've spoken with them and would accept that as a friendly amendment if the committee seems to go in that direction. I respectfully ask for a favorable report and would be happy to answer any questions at that appropriate time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Delegate Riley, for presenting the bill. This afternoon, we have 5 witnesses in support of the bill. First, we have Aaron Penman with Harford County Deputy Sheriff's Union.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Vice Chair and distinguished members of the Appropriations Committee, for the opportunity to propose and explain the Law Enforcement Pension System Benefits Bill, House Bill 48. I also want to specifically thank Delegate Riley and the other co-sponsors of this bill. Ms. Aaron Penman, President of the Harford County Deputy Sheriff's Union, on behalf of over 300 members and many police officers across the state, I ask you to support House Bill 748. As everyone knows, and according to the Uniform Crime Reporting System, crime has risen at an alarming rate over our nation. During this increase, respect for law enforcement has diminished, causing police officers to be challenged, confronted, and murdered. These conditions have resulted in many police officers leaving the profession, as well as a drastic reduction in incompetent candidates for seeking a career in law enforcement. Collectively, these factors will have great consequences in our community and among the law enforcement ranks. Therefore, I believe we need to do more now to ensure we are continuing to hire the most qualified and prepared members of society to handle the increased stressors of becoming law enforcement. Although money is not a driving force of why most choose this career path, it is a consideration. And an adequate and attainable pension in retirement could be a large attraction for would-be applicants. The Harford County Sheriff's Office is currently enrolled in the Maryland State Retirement System under the LEOPS plan. were also 22 other agencies, local agencies, to include state agencies as well, such as the Maryland Transportation Authority and the Natural Resources Police. Currently under LEOP's retirement guideline, members will receive 2% of their average salary for every year of service. So at 25 years, the member will receive 50% of their average highest 3 or 5 years salary based on when they were hired. Members also have the option to max out that benefit at 32 and a half years at 65% of their salary. Although the Harford County Sheriff's Office and the Transportation Authority are state agencies, the LEOP's retirement benefit is noticeably lower than other state law enforcement agencies, such as the Maryland State Police, who accumulate.
Simply summarize, please.
Yep. I think that was covered. I apologize, Vice Chair. The legislation has been filed a few times over the years and has a significant amount of support. As Delegate Riley indicated, the legislation is supported by agencies in LEOPS, the Fraternal Order of Police, the Harford County Sheriff's Office, Sheriff Gaylor, the County Executive Barry Glassman, and MACO, obviously with an amendment. I asked the members of the Appropriation Committee also to support this pension improvement legislation. Over the last few years, Annapolis has led the charge for law enforcement reform. What's that?
Thank you very much for your testimony.
Thank you.
2-minute limit. Thank you very much. Next, we'll hear from Veronica Bruns with State Law Enforcement Officers Labor Alliance, Leola. Ms. Bruns.
Good afternoon, Vice Chair and distinguished members of the committee. I'm Veronica Bruns. I'm a corporal with the Maryland Natural Resources Police and the treasurer of the State Law Enforcement Officers Labor Alliance, otherwise known as Leola, which is the exclusive representative for approximately 1,800 active state law enforcement officers, including 8 agencies who are affected by House Bill 748. They are the Maryland Natural Resources Police, Field Operations Bureau, Maryland State Fire Marshal, Maryland Capitol Police, Department of Health Police, Maryland Vehicle Administration Police, Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services, Intelligence and Investigative Division, and the Warrant Apprehension Unit of the Division of Parole and Probation in the Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services. I am here to testify in support of House Bill 748. Recruiting and retention continues to be a struggle in our state for all law enforcement agencies. In the past 5 years, an overwhelmingly number of agencies have seen recruitment drop from several thousand applicants to barely several hundred. In order to recruit and retain the most qualified law enforcement candidates, agencies must be competitive with their benefits package. I won't go forward in all of the, as between the 2 and the 2.5%, as Delegate Riley has touched on that. But the adjustment under the proposed House Bill of 748 would allow the 8 agencies represented by SLEOLA to receive parity with the Maryland Natural Resources Police, who is also a member of the State Law Enforcement Officers Labor Alliance. Therefore, on behalf of the State Officers Law Enforcement Labor Alliance, I would like to thank the sponsor of this bill, and I would like to ask the committee for a favorable report in this important legislation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Corporal Bruns, for your testimony. Next, we'll hear from Kevin Canale, Maryland Association of Counties.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Kevin Canale here in support of this bill with an amendment. I think the delegate addressed that amendment earlier. We have a number of counties who participate in LEOPS, and we just would ask that the counties have the option as to whether or not to join this enhanced benefit. You heard earlier that County Executive Glassman from Harford County certainly supports this bill, although we think that counties should be able to weigh these costs appropriately before signing on to an enhanced benefit. So we appreciate the delegate being willing to be supportive of our amendment. I can also say the Senate sponsor is supportive of the amendment. And with that, we'd ask for a favorable report with that amendment, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Canale. Next, we'll hear from Jim Krasinski with the Fraternal Order Police.
Members of the committee, my name is Jim Krasinski. I am the president of the Fraternal Order Police Lodge 34, and we do represent all the police officers in the Maryland Transportation Authority Police. We strongly support this bill. This is something we've been working for. As was mentioned, recruitment is at an all-time low, and retention is just as bad as that was. Just to put on some numbers of what we're looking at in my agency, we're currently almost at a 10% vacancy rate. And based on officers who are going to be eligible for retirement in the next 12 months, we're looking to possibly double that number. To put that in perspective, the amount of officers or amount of officer candidates, people who apply, back in 2018, Between that period and 2020, we saw a 75% decrease in the amount of applicants who are applying to be police officers. So with that said, we need to provide a competitive pension package. Unfortunately, LEOPS at the 50% that was described just isn't competitive when compared to the state police retirement. And since we are all in the Maryland pension system, we really feel that there has to be some sort of parity between the pension systems. This bill would absolutely address that issue. I strongly support that on behalf of the 600 members of FOP Lodge 34, and I ask for your support in this bill.
Thank you very much, Mr. Krasinski. Are there any questions from members of the Appropriations Committee, the bill sponsor, and the witnesses? Delegate Novotny is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Delegate Riley, I do appreciate you putting forth this bill. In my opinion, we have several veterans of military service that serve with us also. I recently just crossed over 20 years, and to do the math, 2.5 times 20 years is 50% of my pay that I'll receive for the rest of my life. What I often say, though, is that when the members of the military go overseas, it's the members of the police force that actually are protecting our homes and our communities and our families here when they stay back. So wouldn't you agree that this is a way to ensure that we continue to have safe communities and safe schools and safe families when our police officers are here and are able to be recruited and retained in the way that we need them?
Oh, absolutely. And, from what we've done over the last couple of years to make sure, we pass legislation to, hold our officers accountable and transparent and make sure that we have the top of the best. So I do believe that this will help in that category. And we do want the best here in our homelands, to protect our families and our community. So absolutely. Thank you, Delegate Novotny.
Thank you, Delegate. Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair.
Thank you very much, Delegate. Delegate Henson is recognized.
I would like to ask a question of the bill sponsor. On this committee, we have heard a lot of the concerns over staffing in the state of Maryland. And going through the fiscal note, that built in there is a presumption that LEOPS members would retire sooner than they would under the current law because this bill would allow them to reach their benefit cap earlier. Can you speak to how more members retiring earlier would have impacts on our staffing needs and public safety?
Well, again, I think, you're looking down the road, but currently right now we are so low in the applicants that are actually even wanting to go into the profession. So this package, I think, will encourage, we need help now, is what I'm saying. And this will encourage our folks and people out there in the community to take up the profession. And so, if you would go back and look at other agencies, there's a lot of agencies that, yes, they can retire at 25 years, but many of them actually go past that time frame. This is just not the money, as one of the witnesses said. It's the compassion and it's the love and the safety that they want to give to their community and, fellow neighbors. So we can't look long-term and say this is negative because they might retire soon. This is what we need now, and it will encourage people to go into the profession. And you will find out a lot of them stay longer than that 25 years. So hopefully that answered your question.
Thank you very much, Delegate Henson. Also joining us today for this bill hearing is from the State Retirement and Pension Systems, Ms. Ann Galthrop, and also Mr. Martin Novin, and also written testimonies provided by County Executive Barry Glassman with Hartford County Government. Are there any other questions from members of the Appropriations Committee for this bill? Seeing none, thank you very much to the bill sponsor for being here, and that concludes the bill hearing. We will now move on to House Bill 773, Delegate Mangione, Department of General Service Broker Rebate Fund, Fee Fund established. Delegate Mangione, please proceed when you're ready.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Vice Chair, and of course the committee. And I'm here as this is a cross-file bill from Senator West. I'll just try to be brief. It's been a long afternoon. But this bill establishes the Broker Rebate Fee Fund, which is a commission sharing payment based on a fund generated from the real estate lease transactions. Currently, collected funds from the lease transitions are reverted to the general fund at the end of the fiscal year. However, it is not untypical for these payments to be delayed, and there are multiple steps before the funds actually reach DGS, which means the actual revenue collected does not reflect the annual estimated revenue. So currently, these fees are placed into the DGS Office of Real Estate's operating budget as salaries and other operating expenses. And when these fees are delayed, maintenance of staffing and funding levels, they become an issue. So in addition to the DGS Office of Real Estate must respond to unforeseen and unfunded requests for due diligence studies related to property disputes and ownership issues. So the creation of this broker rebate fee would ensure that DGS Office of Real Estate has stable funding and is able to maintain the necessary staff. So I just want to break it down as simple as I can, that the broker who's under contract to represent the state in a commercial lease, as such, what they are is they're entitled to a commission that is paid by the building owner or the landlord, from the building owner or the landlord to the broker. And under our contract with the broker, this commission is shared between the broker and DGS in form of a broker rebate. So what happens is these funds revert again to the general fund at the end of the fiscal year. And if the rebate funds are not spent in the fiscal year they are received, they revert to and DGS has no ability to use them for DGS expenses. So many times these funds are not received until the very late in the fiscal year and cannot be timely encumbered or received after the fiscal year. So since the DGS Office of Real Estate depends on these funds to cover their operating costs, the loss of unencumbered or late arriving funds becomes problematic, of course, for their operations. So pretty straightforward. I believe there are two members here, two experts to hopefully help answer questions. If not, it's Senator West Crossfall. You can direct them across the hall to him.
Thank you very much, Delegate
Joking
Minchie,
about the last part.
for presenting the bill. It doesn't look like there's any witnesses who are signed up for this bill.
All right.
Are there any questions from members of the Appropriations Committee for the bill sponsor? Seeing none, that concludes the bill hearing for House Bill 773.
Vice Chair Nelson Reichert with Department of General Services.
Mr. Nelson, Department of General Services.
Yes, just wanted to thank Delegate Minchie for presenting the bill, and he's pretty much described what it is, that we would like to have this fund as a revolving fund to make it easier for us to budget and use the funds appropriately for our operations. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Nelson. Are there any other testimonies for this bill? Okay, that concludes the bill hearing for House Bill 773.
Thank you.
Committee, thank you. The committee will now move on to House Bill 566, Delegate Boyce, School Construction Design Documents, Waste Disposal Infrastructure. Delegate Boyce, thank you for being here. Please proceed when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Vice Chairs, and members of the Appropriation Committee. For the record, I'm Regina T. Boyce presenting HB 566, School Construction Design Documents, Waste Disposal Infrastructure. HB 566 requires the Interagency Commission on School Construction to adopt regulations for county boards of education to include waste disposal infrastructures in the design documents for the construction of a new school building. Again, for new school buildings. A waste disposal infrastructure is defined as a place in the cafeteria for the disposal of trash, recyclables, food scraps, and a sink to discard liquid waste. School cafeterias across the country are separating their waste. Most have begun out of curiosity, some as an extension of their science class or environmental clubs, and others as a way to begin composting to feed their school gardens. Regardless of the reasons it is happening, some of the challenges are the beginning the process to separate waste are personnel and logistics. Most schools have one janitor who makes managing this process a bit challenging. However, in some schools, the students have created ways to separate cafeteria waste. In these cases, the janitor has been involved, and to much of their surprise, the janitor has less heavy, smelly, messy garbage. It has made the janitor's work a little lighter and the school's ability to recycle real and practical. The next challenge is logistics, how to categorize waste, to separate it, where to put it, and with what equipment. At some schools, students physically separate out recyclables and waste using buckets, for instance, to collect food or liquid waste. Separation of waste makes it easier to transport. HB 566 design required for new schools will make waste separation easy for students, manageable for maintenance personnel, and sustainable for schools. Most importantly, by learning recycling and composting at school with visual aids as daily reminders, students are able to take this practice home and adopt sustainability as a permanent lifestyle. HB 566 design requirements is on par with our state goals to reduce our carbon footprint and reserve the damage we've done to our planet. Thank you for your time and consideration of HB 566. I urge a favorable report. Mr. Chair, can I quickly share my screen to give a visual aid of what I'm speaking about?
Sure, absolutely.
Thank you so much. Oh, it's disabled.
Committee staff, may we?
You should be able to share your screen now.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Awesome. There we go. Can you all see that? Should be.
Yes, ma'am.
Here we go. So this is an example, and I want to thank past delegate Andrew Casserly for providing these pictures from his school system when he was in Harford County. So this is your general school without a non-functioning system. Just trying to collect different era stuff from different places. This is somewhat of the makeshift internal design that they created at the school system. Easier, small holes in each spaces for the trash. It's easier to pull out and haul. And the next one, here we go, is what we're hoping will go into facilities. So easy to put out trash, easy to place the recycling, and easy for this sink to be able to dump out liquid. I personally remember from my high school days, I was a part of the ecology club, and I tell you, cans with soda in them still after a week smells really badly. And we were the ones who had to transport them back to the back of the school, which was a tough job. But this sort of design, and I'll stop sharing, is what I'm talking about, and hoping that schools in the future could start implementing these small projects. There was a question about whether or not this would be considered as a fundable project given the lifespan of certain equipment like this. And that is something that I have to be honest that I don't know about. I'm assuming it's like most systems, it would be made to last 20 or more years, but this the fiscal note states that they tend to fund projects or equipment that has 15 years or more, but I just don't know the lifespan of this type of equipment in construction. And I urge a favorable report.
Thank you very much, Delegate Boyce, for presenting the bill and also the visual exhibits. Really appreciate it. We have 3 individuals who are providing oral testimony today, favorable. And if they could all please limit their testimony 2 minutes, and then we'll take questions from the committee. First is Justin Garrity with Veteran Compost. Justin Garrity with Veteran Compost.
We have
Okay,
not Mr. Garrity join the call.
Thank you very much, Ms. Phillips. Next, we'll have Carrie Hesley with Sierra Club.
Good afternoon, Vice Chair Chang and committee members. My name is Carrie Hesley. I'm a leader on the Maryland Sierra Club Zero Waste team, and I'm speaking on behalf of the 70,000 members and supporters of the Maryland Sierra Club. We strongly support House Bill 566, which requires the Interagency Commission on School Construction to adopt regulations for the county boards of education to include waste disposal infrastructure in their design for new school construction. Providing this infrastructure for waste separation in a school provides an easy and very obvious way for students to separate waste into recycling, organics, liquids, and trash. Separation of waste into these components will be standard practice in the future, and the construction of these stations supports that practice. Requirement of this infrastructure at the planning phase allows an efficient design at a lower cost compared to having to retrofit existing kitchens. By separating the food waste, students divert food and liquids from the waste stream, which reduces costs for waste disposal and conserves our landfill space. Elimination of organic food waste from the landfill decreases methane, which we all know is a potent greenhouse gas. It also provides for increased composting with all of the numerous benefits of compost. So providing the infrastructure necessary for separation of food waste solidifies the students' awareness of the relationship between our personal habits and our environment. With this bill, the infrastructure needed to sort and divert food waste, liquids, and recyclables is a reality for new schools. The Sierra Club respectfully requests a favorable report on House Bill 566. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Hesley. Next, we'll hear from Emily Ranson with Clean Water Action.
Hello, Chair, members of the committee. I am Emily Ranson with Clean Water Action, here in support of House Bill 566. Designing cafeterias from the onset to accommodate trash, recycle, food scraps, and liquid waste is the most efficient way to prepare for schools for their future of food scrap disposal. Schools across Maryland are already taking significant strides for food scrap disposal and more efficient and sustainable waste strategies. And doing legislation like this now will help prepare schools across the state for when they are ready to embark on that journey. I will do a quick example in Frederick and Montgomery counties. The Lunch at a Landfill program has been helping institute food scrap recycling in schools that were not originally designed for this centralized waste collection. So right now, the program relies on students pouring liquids down sinks that may or may not be available right there, easy in the cafeteria, putting recyclables, empty recyclables, in the correct bin, food scraps to the compost bin, and trash in the trash bin. And as students are participating in this program right now, they're doing really well with this system. And so the name of the game is to make it easy for students to put their waste in the right bin. And House Bill 566 really makes this easy by having newly designed cafeterias have that centralized waste disposal, the proper bins, and especially that critical sink. And so we appreciate Delegate Boyce bringing this legislation forward that will efficiently streamline our waste collection in cafeterias in the future. And we urge a favorable report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Ranson. Also, we have written testimony provided by Joseph Jacuto with the Climate Parents of Prince George's, and also written testimony by Diana Younts with MLC Climate Justice Wing. Are there any questions from members of the Appropriations Committee for the bill sponsor or the witnesses? Seeing none, that ends the bill hearing for House Bill 566. The committee will now move on to House Bill 574.
So much.
Delegate McKay. Higher Education, Edward T. and Mary A. Conroy Memorial Scholarship Program and Jean B. Cryer Memorial Scholarship Program alterations. Delegate McKay, please proceed when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. For the record, my name is Michael McKay. I'm here to present House Bill 574, some alterations to this educational scholarship program for surviving family members of fallen EMS, firefighters, correctional officers, law enforcement officers, or Maryland National Guard members in the line of duty. This bill simply adds trade schools to this existing state benefit. Baltimore Mayor Brandon Scott said in his statement on January 24th, 2022, the following about the line of duty deaths that had occurred in the morning. Today, Baltimore had lost 3 of its bravest among us. This was a gut-wrenching tragedy for our city and the Baltimore City fire departments, and mostly importantly, for the families of our firefighters. There are no words to describe the pain or the severity of the losses we have suffered today. My heart is with the firefighters, their families, and the entire Baltimore City Fire Department who put their lives on safety for others before they being overwhelmed each day, every day. I ask that all Baltimore keep their prayers during this extreme difficult time. Many students earn their degrees at traditional colleges or universities, but others find trade schools more suitable. Trade schools provide career-focused training for an in-demand fields, which can be a practical choice for some careers. Additionally, trade schools offer short completion times and inexpensive tuition rates. Therefore, I believe private career schools or trade schools should be included in this existing educational benefit for a fallen line of duty death. I urge a favorable report of House Bill 508 because it is not what you take when you leave this world, but what you leave behind you that matters. Let's honor these line of duty death family members today, and I urge a favorable report, House Bill 508. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and the members of the Appropriations Committee.
Thank you very much, Delegate McKay, for presenting the bill. This afternoon, we have a witness who's supporting the bill, Mr. Robert Phillips with the Maryland State Firefighters Association. Mr. Phillips, thank you for being here. Please proceed when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank the delegate for bringing this bill to your attention. I am the chairman of the Maryland State Firefighters Association, the chair of the Legislative Committee, and on behalf of our members, which we represent the volunteer service in the state of Maryland when it comes to fire, EMS, rescue, first responders. This bill goes a long ways to help their qualified dependents seek an education other than college. In today's marketplace, not everybody is made for college or wants to go to college. And there's a lot of career paths that this bill with the amendments would open up and make available to them. And on behalf of that, on behalf of the MSFA, I would like to urge your support in this bill. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Phillips. Are there any questions from members of the Appropriations Committee for the bill sponsor or the witness? Seeing none, that ends the bill hearing for House Bill 574. We'll next move on to the committee has been advised that House Bill 530 has been withdrawn by the bill sponsor. We will now move on to House Bill 778. Delegate Solomon, Transportation Investment Program, Mark, Rail Services, Maryland Regional Rail Transformation Act. Delegate Solomon, please proceed when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You caught me off guard there for a minute. Thank you, colleagues, for the opportunity to present. I know I stand between, the only thing that stands between us and turning off our computer screens for a change. So I will be brief. The Maryland Regional Rail Transformation Act is really what is in its title. It is a soup to nuts investment plan for the Maryland MARC system. This bill is bipartisan. It's supported by our colleagues in every corner of the state because that's really where the MARC system touches. And for too long, we have a system that is really just sort of bare bones. We like to think of it as a commuter rail and a commuter rail only. It's not something that you can use on the weekends. It's not something you can use out, oftentimes beyond the early morning and the late evening. And that's really a shame. We have an opportunity with this system to connect really every part of Maryland and to connect Maryland as a broader region, north into Delaware, south into Virginia. And what this bill does is actually lays out what we think is a really feasible and practical plan to make that expansion a reality, including expansions out to Western Maryland, which is, I know, really important to many of our colleagues as well. One thing that I will highlight is, as many of us are aware, we've had a lot of briefings on this. We will see potentially access to historic levels of federal funding. There's potentially upwards of almost $100 billion worth of discretionary grants over the next 5 years that the Department of Transportation will be giving out to expand rail. And in order to make that happen, we need to be in a position to actually have projects that may be shovel ready. And so, what we see from MDOT consistently are sort of these really high level plans. I'm sure many of you, excluding Delegate Corman, do actually read, the MARC Cornerstone plans that come out every 5 years. And what we see in these plans, frankly, are really high level visions. Optimistically saying we want to put an extra track on the Brunswick line or an extra track on the Penn line, but there's never any detail. And we know that there is some work going on at MTA to make some of this happen, but there's not enough of it. And so what we want is to be able to have projects in the pipeline, at 15%, 30% design that will actually be able to compete for federal dollars. And if we don't start that process now, it's not going to be possible to take advantage of those grants. We often, particularly in our neck of the woods, hear about what's going on in Virginia. And in this instance, Virginia really is taking our lunch. They announced a $4 billion investment program in the Long Bridge and expanding access to rail. That was a partnership between the state, Amtrak, and CSX. It seems like almost every other month they are announcing some new expanded rail line. And we had a briefing with this committee, with the subcommittee a few weeks ago, where we really heard from a former transportation official in the previous administration in Virginia that just talked about the consistent support for rail, regardless of party, over really the last 2 decades. And I think that's something else really important to make a point of with this bill, that this is really about outlining a plan and making sure that it is a priority, regardless of who the governor is, regardless of what party it is, that this is a priority for, again, every corner of Maryland, for our business leaders across the state, that we have a fully integrated transit network that allows, folks to access jobs, folks to access more affordable housing. Before I wrap up, I do just want to point out there is a lot of testimony that's been submitted. Baltimore County, Prince George's County, Anne Arundel County, the mayor of Frederick. We were joined yesterday by Senator Van Hollen for a press conference in support of the bill, and you'll see testimony from business leaders across the state as well. So I'm hoping that the committee we'll give this bill a favorable report. And with that, I will turn it over to the witnesses who have joined us.
Thank you very much, Delegate Solomon. Very much appreciate you presenting the bill. This afternoon, we have 9 witnesses who are providing testimony. To all the witnesses, as a reminder, 2-minute limit on the testimony. First, we have Larry Casecamp with Smart Transportation Division.
Good afternoon, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Larry Casecamp, Legislative Director for Smart Transportation Division, represent railroad workers, including operating employees on MARC and Amtrak commuter service. We're here in support of House Bill 778. Our organization has been an advocate for upgrading, improving, and expanding MARC service for many years. Our members work directly with the public. They have experienced the effects the lack of maintenance has had on the systems. They also hear the complaints of the unreliable service, the system being in disrepair, and the need for modernization and expansion. The goals we've been advocating for are goals every transit system should strive for, like completing backlog maintenance, improving service schedules through additional morning, midday, evening, weekend, and run-through service. In addition, extending service to Eastern, Western, Southern Maryland, and into Virginia and Delaware. House Bill 778 works toward these goals. Current #1 issue on a single subject matter by the legislature is climate change and the environment. A successful transit system is good for the environment. Thousands of automobiles on the roadways every day result in extremely high emissions of greenhouse gases. And the #1 complaint from the traveling public is roadway congestion. Investment in MARC will help alleviate these problems by reducing the number of automobiles on the road, which in turn reduces traffic, congestion, and pollution. A successful transit system is also great for businesses. It improves the business climate as it expands the pool of employees while expanding public access to businesses. With the investment the federal government has signaled for rail transit, there's no better time than now to move forward with the investments to modernize and expand rail commuter service. Virginia has recognized the benefits of modernizing and expanding rail service in their state. It's time for Maryland to get on board. Our organization's in strong support of this proposed legislation, House Bill 778. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Casecamp. Next, we'll hear from Brian Ditzler with the Maryland Sierra Club.
Good afternoon. My name is Brian Ditzler, and I'm speaking here on behalf of Maryland Sierra Club and its 70,000 plus members and supporters in the state. We strongly support HB 778 because Maryland needs a truly regional rail system that's reliable, runs all day in both directions, serves more Maryland communities, and connects to Virginia and Delaware. There are at least 5 solid reasons to support expanding MARC now. First, improving rail service is far more cost effective than expanding highways. Virginia is planning to spend $3.7 billion to expand its commuter rail service north, south, and west of Richmond, after studies showed that spending up to $12 billion expanding lanes along I-95 would not result in any reduction in traffic congestion. Here in Maryland, if the MARC Brunswick line from Frederick to DC were expanded, there'd be no need to expand Interstate I-270 as the governor has proposed. Second, MARC, as the previous speaker said, is an environmentally friendly way to travel. Transportation is the largest contributor to climate disrupting greenhouse gases in Maryland, and also a major source of toxic emissions that are hazardous to human health. Most of that pollution comes from the tailpipes of gas and diesel fueled cars and trucks. Getting people out of their cars and onto MARC rail would be much better for the environment. Third reason, planning improvements to MARC rail service now would position our state to compete for the $66 billion or more in federal funds for rail that will be available through the new infrastructure law, as Delegate Solomon mentioned. Fourth, an expanded MARC rail service would provide many benefits to residents in more communities around the state who need a reliable and efficient way to get to and from their jobs, housing, medical providers, shopping, entertainment, recreation, and more. And lastly, expanding MARC would lead to more prosperous and sustainable growth in our region, especially in the communities that would be served by MARC. In summary, improving MARC would bring about positive change for our state and our communities. We urge a favorable report on this bill.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ditzler. Very much appreciate your time. We have Donald Fry from the Greater Baltimore Committee. Donald Fry.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair, members of the Appropriations Committee. I'm Don Fry, President and CEO of the Greater Baltimore Committee. I appreciate the opportunity to speak today in favor of House Bill 778 that requires the Maryland Transit Administration to establish individual investment programs to advance the Cornerstone Plan, mark improvements, and specified rail priority projects. The GBC has submitted written testimony to the committee. The mission of the GBC is to bring the corporate and civic community together to find solutions to problems that affect our competitiveness and our viability. Advocating for adequate transportation and mobility infrastructure in Maryland and the Greater Baltimore region has been a long-standing priority of the GBC. There is no greater challenge that needs to be addressed in our region and our state than ensuring that all of our citizens have equitable access and reliable access to employment and educational opportunities. House Bill 778 is consistent with one of the key tenets of a report that we issued called Gaining a Competitive Edge, Keys to Economic Growth and Job Creation. That report identified 8 key pillars to a competitive business environment, one of which is an essential prerequisite of a competitive environment includes well-funded and maintained highway, transit, port, and airport infrastructure provides reliable and efficient options to move people, goods, and services. In preparing that report, we did interviews with state and local economic development directors who universally agreed that the state needs to consistently increase its investment in transportation. It can't take years off. Transit projects are costly, but delays only exacerbate access to transportation challenges and increase the cost of needed projects. So when you look at the combination of the economic factors to attract and retain job opportunities, the environmental factors of aiding in the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions, the equity factor of ensuring the jobs are available to citizens that are heavily reliant on public transportation, that just heightens the importance of this legislation. House Bill 7078 will require MTA to effectively advance the Mark Cornerstone Plan and provide a realistic plan for regional commuter rail transit and to follow through with those implementations. For those reasons, the Greater Baltimore Committee recommends a favorable report on House Bill 778. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fry. Appreciate your testimony. Next, we have Kristen Harbison with the Maryland League of Conservation Voters.
Yes, good afternoon, Mr. Vice Chair, members of the committee. My name is Kristen Harbison. I'm the political director for the Maryland League of Conservation Voters. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you this afternoon. It's a pleasure to see so many of my friends on the Appropriations Committee. Maryland LCV works at the intersection of strong climate policy and environmental justice. And this bill, as you've heard, supports both of those interests. And we are pleased to support House Bill 778. We're grateful for Delegate Solomon for his leadership on this bill. Rather than repeat some of the points that have been brought up before, the climate crisis, the contribution of transportation to that climate crisis, the challenges of equity, I want to give context about some of the ways that this bill is important in the context of a lot of things that have been happening in the General Assembly and are happening this year. Last year, thanks in large part to the leadership of Delegate Corman and this committee, the Maryland General Assembly passed the Transportation Safety and Investment Act, which stabilizes sufficient funding for our state fleet of buses, trains, light rails, subways to a state of good repair. That was incredibly important and obviously a priority of Maryland League of Conservation Voters and the environmental community. This bill and its partner bill, the companion bill, HB 710, that incentivizes equitable investment in the transit-oriented development. These two bills are the obvious next step. We need to take the funding that has been secured for the committee and then work to make sure that we're expanding and improving on our rail system and on the MARC rail system, which is so important to as a public transit system in the state to create greater connectivity to underserved areas, to surrounding states, and to strengthen our economic, environmental, and labor positions within the state. It's a pleasure to be here with my partners in organized labor and with other business community and other environmental organizations. We are pleased to be here and offer our support for this important legislation and strongly urge a favorable report. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Harbison. Always great to see you. Next, we'll have Jim McAndrew with the Greater Washington Partnership. Joe McAndrew with Greater Washington Partnership. Next, we have Jay Corballis with JBG Smith.
Hi, good afternoon. Thanks for having me. My name's Jay Corballis. I'm with JBG Smith. JBG is a real estate investment trust based in Bethesda that owns, operates, and develops real estate assets in the transit-oriented submarkets around Washington, D.C., including National Landing, where we serve as the development partner for Amazon's HQ2 project, as well as Virginia Tech's Innovation Campus. I'm here today on behalf of JBG to strongly offer our strong support for HB 778 and highlight the opportunity reflected by one of its key provisions, the extension of MARC service to Northern Virginia. National Landing is poised for significant job growth in the coming decades, fueled by planned growth from Amazon, Virginia Tech, and others. Sustaining that growth will require attracting large numbers of knowledge workers from across the region, the majority of whom will commute by public transit. With a highly educated workforce and robust transit network, Maryland is well poised to benefit. But the existing MARC service pattern hinders that opportunity by requiring commuters to make multiple transfers to reach National Landing. Extending MARC service to National Landing would allow commuters from across the state to take advantage of job opportunities, while at the same time allowing new employees to settle in Maryland and have an easy commute to their new jobs. The timing of this effort is especially important. Virginia is moving forward with an ambitious multi-billion-dollar investment program that will significantly expand rail service and create additional capacity across the Potomac. If Maryland is to take advantage of this once-in-a-generation opportunity, planning must start now, and HB 778 provides the framework to do that. We applaud Delegate Solomon for his leadership on this issue and encourage the committee to issue a favorable report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we'll hear from Joshua Boki.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair, members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to provide favorable testimony on HB 778 for the Regional Rail Transformation Act. My name is Josh Boki. I am a resident of the city of Frederick, and I've submitted my written testimony to the committee, but would like to thank Delegate Solomon for his leadership, as well as all of the co-sponsors of this bill for putting forward this regional initiative. I would just say that one of the things that I really appreciate about this bill is that it would require MTA to take specific actions by specific years on the work that's required to expand MARC service, really concrete building blocks. Frederick County, as I'm sure members of the committee know already, Frederick County is one of the fastest growing jurisdictions in the state of Maryland, and about 40% of our residents commute out of the county to get to their work. Yet we have limited options when it comes to regional transit. And so it's really not just an economic development issue, although that's certainly very crucial. I would also say that it's also an equity and accessibility issue as well, but just on a wider scale when it comes to transit. Lastly, I would just want to echo both Mr. Ditzler of the Sierra Club and Ms. Harbison of League of Conservation Voters for their reference about the environmental benefits of MARC, as well as being able to position us as the state of Maryland with this bill going forward to take advantage of future federal funding. So I would respectfully request that the committee submit a favorable report on this bill, and thank you for the opportunity this afternoon.
Thank you very much, Mr. Boki. Next, we have Mr. Herbert Harris Jr., Brotherhood of Locomotive Engineers and Trainmen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, and I submitted my full testimony and appreciate the opportunity to provide you comments today on Bill HB 778. I represent the locomotive engineers that operate the MARC Penn Line, Amtrak, and also the Virginia Rail Express locomotive engineers. And today I offer my full and total support for HB 778, the MARC Transformation Act of 2022. And we support this legislation for a couple of very specific reasons. One, it will establish an investment program for MARC within the Consolidated Transportation Fund plan, and long-term sustainable dedicated funding for MARC is going to be critical to expand it and the transformation and improvements all of us are striving for and want. Secondly, in order for MARC to reach its fullest economic and transportation potential, it is going to need this level of funding. Improvement of MARC, the MARC rail system should be a bipartisan commitment, regardless of who's in the governor's mansion or who is leading the General Assembly. Because of my responsibilities as the legislative representative and safety officer for the Virginia Rail Express locomotive engineers, I've witnessed firsthand the bipartisan support in Virginia over 5 gubernatorial administrations, which have gotten them to the point where they are now as a national leader that's already been mentioned in previous testimony. One of the other issues that I think is critical to this particular moment is the potential partnership with the federal government because of the available grant funding that will be available through the INVEST Act. When you're looking at $66 billion, $36 billion of it specifically allocated for state and federal grants, this is a go big or go home moment for the state of Maryland when it comes to rail. This is a seminal moment because of the potential federal partnership. And one of the other provisions I think it's good in the legislation is it will once and for all look at the consolidation of all of these multiple plans that I've seen over my 28 years in the rail industry that was cobbled together to create the cornerstone plan. It will determine whether or not the state of Maryland is actually positioning itself to be competitive with the other states that are going to be pursuing these grant dollars.
Thank you, Mr.
that are
Harris.
allocated. Thank you very much. And we wish you, we encourage a favorable support report on this legislation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Harris, for your testimony. Next, we have Benjamin Ross with the Maryland Transit Opportunities Coalition.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman and members of the committee. I represent Maryland Transit Opportunities Coalition, a statewide coalition of transit advocates, transit riders, and transit workers. We strongly support this bill because of the enormous potential of what a regional MARC system could be. A student in West Baltimore could live at home and go to school in College Park, take the red line to West Baltimore Station, take the frequent MARC to New Carrollton, and then take the purple line and get off in the middle of the campus in College Park. A student from Hagerstown or Elkton could go home from College Park on the weekend and wouldn't need a car to do that. The state actually came out with a plan in 2007 that would bring us to that in 23 years then. And in 15 years, we've only made a few years of progress. So this bill has the needed specificity to really get things moving. We do propose one very minor amendment, which is detailed in the written testimony. It regards exactly where the first section of track should go on the Brunswick line. But we urge you to consider that amendment and then give this bill a favorable report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ross. And also we have written testimony by Diana Youts with the MLC Climate Justice Wing. Are there any questions from members of the Appropriations Committee for the bill sponsor or the witnesses? Delegate Price.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Yeah, I mean, every year we seem like we have a new act to shift more money from other parts of the Transportation Trust Fund into mass transit, and this is no different. So the way I guess the way that that the state budget, so they do go on a 6-year timeline. So for FY23, what we'd have to do is we'd have to defund another project by $41.9 million. Anybody can answer this question. Is there any suggestion on what part of transportation that we should take this from? The port, the airport, roads, bridges? Is there any idea of, is there a priority, I guess, among anyone who has who's testified today where they would suggest we take that money from?
I'm happy to address that. Delegate, thanks for the question. I know we've all had hearty debates over the purpose of government funding and transportation, and I know one of our colleagues in particular would probably have a lot of opinions on this. The fiscal note really provides, I think, a false choice. There's nothing that requires that this money come out of the Transportation Trust Fund. I mean, there's a whole litany of different examples, the Howard Street Tunnel, The Metro dedicated funding that the governor over the past couple of years has decided to take out of either the general fund, provide general obligation bonds for, or shift from other dedicated purpose accounts. So you'll notice there's nothing in this bill that says the money has to come out of the trust fund. There was a comment in the fiscal note, I believe, around, or may have actually been from MDOT itself, that this would jeopardize the funding for the Transit Safety and Investment Act that was dedicated last year for the state of good repair. That is a mandate. So again, nothing in our bill says that you have to make this false choice. We have a $4.6 billion surplus currently. I think what you've heard from folks, from both business leaders, environmentalists, from our local government leaders across the state as well, that this is an investment we think will pay huge dividends in return. So kind of reject the false choice. Plus, again, the budget, there's no requirement in the budget that it comes from the trust fund. So we're not looking to cannibalize anything else. We're looking at making investments that we think will pay really great dividends down the road.
Yeah, I mean, I just saw that in the fiscal note, and that's the concern that I have long term. I mean, I understand, that in the urban areas in your district that we want to move folks off of the highways because they are congested. Heck, I go to Montgomery County and I get frustrated when it takes my GPS is telling me it takes 45 minutes to go 3 miles. I'm not used to that on the Eastern Shore. To go 3 miles, it takes 3 minutes or less sometimes. So if I'm in a hurry. But that's in the future, because obviously in Western Maryland, Eastern Shore, we don't have trains, we don't have MARC, we don't have mass transit, other than a few buses that might have a few routes here or there. And so we talk about equity. See, that's the difference between, the folks who live in my district is they do have to pay for cars. They have to pay for their car insurance. They have to pay for $3.50 gas to be able to get anywhere. They don't have the option of mass transit. And so when they do pay the gas tax and it goes into the transportation trust fund, we want to make sure those roads continue to be maintained because they have no other option, and in moving in forward, if whether, I support this or any of my colleagues on the shore support and, this, we want to make sure that we're not going to get cannibalized in the future because we have to rely very heavily on roads and bridges because we only have one option. And I know certainly the environmental advocates, they want to sort of shift our behavior generally away from fossil fuels. But we have to have an answer before we do that, particularly in the rural areas, because I can tell you a lot of folks like living in the rural areas. They don't want to have to move to an urban area just in order to be able to afford, transportation. So thank you.
So Delia, and just to, I appreciate your comments. And just one thing that I want to add on that is there is a huge component in this bill on expansion into Western Maryland. And frankly, the history of the Eastern Shore used to be ripe with rail connections, which I think, we would love to see expanded. But I think what's also really important is part of the reason why you see a lot of support, I think, from colleagues around the state on this is I think it will really open up the opportunity for people to live everywhere. You won't necessarily have to live immediately within driving distance of a job. If you could hop onto a train, in Hartford County, or you could hop on a train in Western Maryland and be at a job, you could conceivably be at a job at Amazon in 45 minutes in Northern Virginia, or one of the biotech companies on the Brunswick line, or something in Hartford County, and you wouldn't have to use your car. So I think this also would theoretically open up a lot more space around the state for folks to settle.
I understand. Thank you.
Are there any other questions for members of the Appropriations Committee for House Bill 778? Seeing none, that ends the bill hearing for House Bill 778, and also that will end the bill hearings for today. We have announcement that tomorrow, 1 p.m., there's a voting session for the full committee, and that voting list was emailed all to our offices. On behalf of House Appropriations Committee Chairwoman Maggie McIntosh and the entire committee, I just want to thank all the bill sponsors and all the witnesses today for a robust discussion. Have a great evening. Thank you.